So, en español y en inglés para las personas.
Y también en Spanglish.
Sí, el otro idioma. Mi nombre es Diana, soy parte de un equipo de jóvenes inmigrantes en San Diego. Somos parte del San Diego Dream Team y también soy parte de una campaña que se llama On the Dream, que somos trabajo acerca de acción diferida. So my name is Diana, I'm part of the San Diego Dream Team, and it's a group of immigrant youth in San Diego that we do along with On the Dream, which is a national campaign to do DACA work, to get folks, assist them with the application process of DACA. And we have...
Primera pregunta es, ¿cuántos de ustedes entienden el español nada más? Nada más el español. ¿Todos los demás entienden inglés y español? Okay. Me llamo Laura, yo trabajo con la organización nacional que se llama United Youth Dream, y es una organización que tiene muchos afiliados en todos los Estados Unidos. Tenemos 52 grupos y trabajamos con cosas de inmigración, DACA, educación y también cómo ayudar a las familias para que no hayan deportaciones, para que paremos las deportaciones. Yo soy la coordinadora que trabaja con las cosas de educación, entonces con los estudiantes, pero también con los educadores en cómo ayudar a sus estudiantes a buscar becas, cuáles son las escuelas que proveen otras formas de matriculación, y también para que los estudiantes sepan cuáles preguntas tienen que preguntar para que los puedan ayudar en esta escuela. Yes. So, con United We Dream, como dije, tenemos diferentes componentes del programa. So we have On the Dream, which is what Diana's going to talk a little bit more about in a little bit. But we also have QUIP, which is Queer Immigrant Rights Project, that works a lot with the intersectionality of queer rights and immigrant rights and how this all impact a lot of our not one like resources, but also our rights as human people. And then the program that I mentioned earlier is DEEP, which is the one that works a lot with education access and also advocacy for policy changes. And then that one more, which is END, which is the one that works with education. Just a little more about DEEP is really that the long-term vision is that as we're working and creating networks within schools, educators, and the youth that are doing this work, is that we build this space and that we build power so that in the long run we can also do campaigns that affect our educational system. So for some of the youth in here, how many of you have had a class where they talk about your history, in terms of your own history in terms of like whether you came from Mexico, I came from Mexico. Like I never really learned about my culture in my classes when I was going to school. That's one example, but another example is like how many of you really think that standardized testing like the SATs and other types of testing really prepare us for college? Or is it just really, should teachers be paying more attention to teaching and doing other kinds of curriculum, right? So different things that are affecting our education system on the larger scale, and how we can work so that those are the things that are pretty much saying that we're prepared for college, or we're prepared for high school. So moving beyond the larger vision of our education and how it's not serving us right now as youth.
And so, like I mentioned, I'm one of the field organizers in San Diego for On the Dream. And On the Dream is a national campaign that is helping with the help of a lot of partners, so legal partners, community partners, to be able to implement DACA clinics and DACA workshops and really educate folks about Deferred Action. And we'll talk a little bit about what Deferred Action is for some of you who have heard about it or who haven't heard about it. And we'll also talk about the DACA renewal process. But like I mentioned, On the Dream is a national campaign to really be able to engage folks that are applying for DACA.
So, ¿cuál es la acción diferida? ¿Cuántos de ustedes han oído de la acción diferida o Deferred Action? ¿Y ustedes vinieron a esta sesión porque tienen preguntas o porque quieren saber más de cómo es el programa? Porque tienen preguntas. Porque quieren saber más del programa. Bueno, las dos, ¿verdad? Sí. Es lo que decía en el title. So that's good. A la acción diferida, como dijo uno de los speakers, Erika, es algo que nosotros como estudiantes o como immigrant youth, we advocated for. No es algo que el presidente que un día se levantó y estuvo súper feliz y quiere decir, yo quiero hacer algo bueno para la comunidad. No, es algo que nosotros peleamos para que nos dieran esto, Deferred Action. Okay? Y eso es algo muy importante porque mucha gente a veces dice, oh, thank you, President Obama, or thank you, for giving us this opportunity, but we have to understand that we are working and advocating for this, and that's why it's important for all of you to get involved, si son estudiantes, si son padres, si son allies, Entonces, la acción diferida no es una policy, es un programa federal, pero también como no es una policy y nada más es programa, es algo que puede desaparecer mañana porque no está escrito en la policy. Fue anunciado, como dijeron en la introducción ahora, el 15 de junio, pero fue implementado el 12 de agosto.
Agosto 15.
Entonces, yo cuando salió la aplicación estaba en Chicago y les quería enseñar un video, pero no había tiempo para ponerla, pero en ese video pueden ver que miles y miles de estudiantes y familias y educadores se pusieron en fila para que fueran a una organización a someter su aplicación y para pedir más preguntas como ustedes están aquí, ¿verdad? Y eso fue una línea de como de 5 millas larga, muy larga. Y eso para mí fue algo muy, it was very powerful because you saw a lot of group of people who were coming together and were no longer, they were coming out, they were saying, I'm undocumented because I'm going to apply for Deferred Action. And so that was something that was I've never seen anything like that before, where people were bringing their boxes of papers to try to see if this information was something that was going to qualify for Deferred Action. Entonces, como dije, esto no es una policy, lo que hace es que te cumple para que no seas deportado durante 2 años. Eso es una de las cosas. Otra cosa es que también te da acceso a que puedes agarrar un seguro social. Y con el seguro social puedes trabajar en los Estados Unidos. En otros casos, en diferentes estados también, con DACA, usted puede aplicar para tener una licencia para manejar. Y en otros lugares también, con el trabajo, también puede tener acceso a healthcare, a seguro médico. Lo que no es DACA, como dije, no es permiso ni tampoco es acceso a que sea residente o ciudadano. Afortunadamente eso no estaba incluido. Pero no quiere decir que tenemos que pagar aquí, tenemos que seguir buscando para que eso sea una opción en el futuro, ¿verdad? También, no, en términos como estamos en California, en términos de in-state tuition o de matrícula, cuánto tenemos que pagar de matrícula como estudiantes indocumentados, aquí en California pues tenemos la oportunidad de pagar la misma matrícula que todos los estudiantes, aunque no tengamos papeles. Pero tienes que, you have to meet specific requirements for California Dream Act and for 8540. And so, no vean una vez a cuatro porque tienen otras sesiones durante el día hoy para que platican sobre eso. Pero también hemos visto que con DACA, otros estados, por ejemplo Arizona, tienen diferentes escuelas que están diciendo que porque tienen DACA los estudiantes ahora pueden pagar matrícula de in-state tuition. Entonces eso no es bueno, pero tampoco es como no está a nivel estatal, nada más son muy específicas instituciones. Entonces nosotros tenemos que seguir teniendo esas conversaciones para que sea algo estatal y para que también los educadores en esas escuelas que sí dicen que sí, que sepan que es algo para que ya no le digan a los estudiantes, no puedes pagar esto, ¿verdad? Entonces es importante de que sepamos qué es lo que está pasando en nuestros estados para que podamos decirles, no, sí tengo este derecho.
Perdón,
Es reciente, ¿verdad? Esta ley para que sean, pagan igual para, como los demás. Porque anteriormente, ajá. Sí.
Entonces, ¿quién es elegible para DACA? Hay muchos requisitos diferentes, como ustedes ven aquí, diferentes áreas. Una es edad, una es de dónde, cuándo entró a los Estados Unidos, otra es de educación y otra es de más de su persona, si no tiene, si no ha hecho ningún delito o cosas así. So I'm going to go over through these, actually every column in English. So who is eligible for DACA? And as you can see, there's different groups here that are different requirements under different groups. One is age, the other one is residency, the third one is entrance, fourth is education, and then you see other background questions. So to be eligible for DACA, you have to be at least 15 years of age or older unless you're currently in like a deportation proceeding to apply. So this is to apply. You have to have been less than the age of 31. And then this is kind of like a tricky area, right? Do you want to kind of explain like why is this tricky?
Well, so yeah, just in terms of like all these requirements, it's like you have to have them. And in terms of the age, so you have to have been here, be less than 31 years old as of June 15, 2012. So if your birthday was after that, so if you're 31 after this age, you can apply, and it's one of those requirements that you must meet, just like the one that came to the U.S. before 16 years old. So you must have come to the U.S. before you were 16 years old. It's not one of those requirements that is flexible, like you have to have come here before the age of 16. And we have questions, and we're going to go ahead and leave the questions until the end, or yeah, until the end. So if you can save your question for them.
So then this kind of tells you that if I had a cousin or friend that came a day after, they were 16, like, unfortunately DACA does not help them, it's not accessible to them. And so we've had a lot of cases where we're like, you meet everything else but that requirement. So like she said, it's not an option, it's not flexible. Again, which is why we still need to continue to advocate for a lot of more things. In terms of being here in the United States, you have to have been here for 5 consecutive years as the date of the time that it was announced. So June 15, 2012. In terms of entrance, you have to have come in without inspection, or you have to have a visa that has already been expired as of that date as well. Education, you have to be currently in school, so whether it's high school, community college, getting your GED, doing a technical program, you have to prove that you're technically enrolled in school. One of the things that I want to point out about education is that this is really important to make sure that our youth who are 15 and can apply, that are eligible, that they apply. The reason being is because after you turn 18, you start to incur unlawful presence. And so we don't want our students to get that, because then if whenever legislation happens in the future and you want to apply to some kind of relief, usually it means that after you start incurring unlawful presence, it depends on like what the legislation is going to say, but usually it means that you have like a 10-year bar to apply for specific things. So we want to get as many of our youth, so as many of you, if you are eligible, to apply now before you turn 18, so you don't get that unlawful presence. And then obviously the other thing is background, so making sure that there's no felonies, that you don't have any more than 3 misdemeanors, and a lot of the back end of the things. They want to make sure that this is something that people who don't have felonies are eligible for. So how does the process work? And so this is kind of like a very easy kind of to understand graph. Lo que pasa es que usted agarra la aplicación, la llena, hay muchas oportunidades que otros como On the Dream, que les ayudan a llenar la aplicación. Si tienen preguntas, también ellos pueden ayudarles a hacer eso, pero entonces se agarra la aplicación, se llena y luego la manda. Es importante que tomen copias para que sepan qué fue lo que escribieron en su aplicación, para que si les preguntan no me dio información para educación, no me dio suficiente para, etcétera, usted sabe qué es lo que suplió con la aplicación. Y luego cuando ya meta la aplicación, le van a mandar una carta que dice ya agarramos su aplicación, espera para que les demos una cita para que vayan a que les den lo que se llama biometric exam, which is when they take your fingerprints and your picture and other things. So then that happens. They give you a letter. You show up for our appointments. They take your fingerprints. They take your picture, and you have to fill out like a really simple form that just basically verifies that it's you. And then once that happens, you have to kind of go another waiting period, and you just kind of wait to see what happens in your background check. Because this is used to do a background check to make sure that what you wrote down in your application matches with your background check, essentially. Entonces, número 3, y número 4 es, ellos te dicen if you are eligible and if you were approved, and then you get, after the time, you get your card. Hemos visto que este proceso toma averagely about 6 to 8 months, but it's also taken up to years. Like some people applied when it first came out and they're still waiting or just got their permission, and some people got it within like a month or 2. So it's really, there's like really no way to tell, but the average has been 6 to 8 months.
Tengo una pregunta. ¿Está hablando de que DACA es lo mismo que la acción diferida o está hablando de la acción diferida para aplicar? Porque estoy viendo que casi todos los requisitos son lo mismo.
DACA es acción diferida.
Es la acción diferida, aunque. Entonces, para cuando quieren ir para requerir la acción diferida, sí es lo mismo requisito, por eso dije, es lo mismo requisito para hacer la acción diferida.
Okay, so es que, we're talking about DACA, pero estamos diciendo acción diferida, pero es importante que lo que usted dijo platiquemos sobre ello, porque sí había acción diferida, que nada más era acción diferida, it was a childhood arrival before DACA. And this was happening through administrative relief through specific cases, but it wasn't targeted to youth. So DACA is targeted to youth. But we're just, to just not say the whole term, we say deferred action, which that's an important thing that you brought up, that we need to really clarify these things too. What was your question about? Sorry.
What happens to the people that apply and then they find out that they're not eligible?
So usually what happens is that they go back and talk to either to a lawyer or an organization that has either helped them. No.
No, so the thing is so when you're turning your paperwork, yeah, so the thing is so before you apply, you should know that you're eligible, right? So like you're able to apply for DACA. Whether you do it through an organization or you do it through a lawyer, you should know that you meet the requirements, right? If they should, they're using this information as information to process your paperwork, not to go after you. Because if you don't have a criminal record, there shouldn't be a reason as to why, there shouldn't be a reason for them to go after you. But it just,
why can't the country that you're on DACA if it's not any promises of position?
Can you repeat your question?
That's entrapment.
She asked if what if you want to leave the country and you're a DACA recipient?
We'll talk about advanced parole.
I have a question too. I have a direct question. What if there is an amnesty program, like DREAM, other amnesty program, and you're not on DACA? Does that reduce your chances?
We can't answer that question because there's not necessarily like a program right now. So we're presenting just in DACA, and we're presenting about the options. We know that there's going to be people left out. We know people that are left out. So like Laura said, it's important to continue to do that work of whatever it means to push for whatever you believe in and other folks believe in. So we're just presenting on DACA on what's available for folks. So we know people that are, my parents are not eligible for this. So I know people that don't qualify for this, but we just really want to get people to apply because we know that this is here. There's a study shown that there's 1.9 million people that are DACA eligible, but about a little bit over a quarter of folks have applied for this. And so 600,000 people have applied for this. So we know that there's people out there that haven't applied, so we just want to kind of present these information. So if you know someone, if you're DACA eligible, for you to be able to apply for this, because we know that this is something that you're able to get right now. So, you know, in the future, that's up in the air.
Also, I want to mention that the paperwork, it takes a long time.
Yes, it does.
Like your evidence, so I won't be able to mention it.
Yeah, so it takes a while to gather your evidence. It takes a while to go through the whole process. You know, it could be 6 months, 8 months. So yeah, it's a process of a lot of things. So we're gonna go ahead and move forward.
So what has DACA done? I think you also bring a valid point. Like when there was like the notion that DACA was announced, a lot of students were afraid to apply because essentially they're providing all of this information of where they've lived, where their parents are, the names they've used, all this information, right? And so people were afraid in a way to apply for this because they say, there's this database with all my information. And what are they going to do if, one, I get rejected, or two, at that point it was re-election season, Obama doesn't get re-elected. Like, you know, the opponent wasn't very supportive of DACA or the DREAM Act, but essentially what happened is that we have seen, and there has been various studies since then that have shown that undocumented students, because of DACA, are more open about their status, and also more open about reaching out about other kinds of resources, not just education, but about driver's license and other things. It also has been shown that it has increased the motivation to go to school. So whether that's, you know, going back to school if you have to stop out and get your GED, or re-enroll in high school if maybe you are still able to go to high school, to go back to school, so that you can meet the educational requirements to be able to apply for DACA. And then there's a lot of other things, a lot of, you know, careers. Like I said, some states have the option for students to get in-state tuition because of DACA. That's very tricky. I mean, it depends on institution, but also depends on state law and policy. And then now there's also more opportunity to work. So a lot of the times we were, I know for myself when I was younger, I was working, but at the same time I wasn't getting paid the correct wage because I had to work kind of like under the table, so they would pay me. But now I also get benefits and other stuff, other kinds of support.
¿Tienen alguna pregunta en español acerca del programa de acción diferida?
Primero otra vez, no me quedó muy claro. ¿DACA es lo mismo que acción diferida?
Acción diferida para jóvenes inmigrantes.
Ajá, es lo mismo.
Ajá, sí.
Ok. Ustedes me están dando información para aplicar para la acción diferida, por cierto. Ok, esa era mi pregunta.
¿Tienen alguna otra pregunta acerca del programa, de los requisitos o de lo que sea? Ajá.
Yo fui con una organización donde me ayudaron para DREAM Act. Es lo mismo, ¿verdad?
No. Entonces, hay diferentes. El DREAM Act fue una propuesta que no pasó en el 2010. Okay. Fue introducida en el 2001 y después de eso fue introducida varias veces en el Congreso, pero en el 2010 no pasó por 5 votos. Entonces, no ha pasado nada, no hay ley que pueda dar para los jóvenes inmigrantes, pero acción diferida, ahorita es ese programa que está para que las personas puedan aplicar. Y las personas sí lo confunden con el DREAM Act, pero el DREAM Act y acción diferida son diferentes. Hay aquí en California, hay California DREAM Act que te da ayuda financiera, pero no es el DREAM Act, el federal, DREAM Act federal.
Ok, fui con esa organización y ellos le sacaron huellas a mi niño. ¿Eso tenía que ser así? O porque me han dicho que él tenía que haber ido a hacer las huellas cuando migración ya lo llamara para hacer sus huellas. Pero yo pregunté y me dicen según que le sacan las huellas antes para mirar su récord, si no tiene récord criminal. Debería ser.
A veces las personas hacen, depende de su caso, es un proceso que hacen, que van con un abogado o sin abogado y van a tomar las huellas, lo pueden hacer, pero no es requisito porque cuando tú aplicas, el gobierno va a hacer que hagas esas huellas, pero a veces las personas si tienen cualquier cosa, por cualquier razón, pueden hacer esto, que nomás quieren sacarle las huellas antes de que lo hagan, pero sí, ¿eso contesta su pregunta?
Pero entonces,
Es una opción, pero no es requisito de que lo hagan antes de que apliquen. Pero las personas a veces lo hacen porque quieren checar si tienen un récord o lo que sea. Hay diferentes razones por qué lo hacen, pero tal vez lo pueden hacer, pero no es requisito porque, como le digo, cuando uno entrega su aplicación, después le mandan un recibo, y cuando le mandan el recibo, le mandan una cita para que vaya con el gobierno a tomar sus huellas. Y si queremos podemos hablar después de esta sesión si tiene una pregunta.
otra pregunta. Estaban diciendo que, por ejemplo, este programa dura 2 años.
Sí.
Y como dice ella, en cualquier momento puede parar.
Ajá.
Les dan seguro social. Okay, mi pregunta es esta. Para el seguro social y para la licencia, yo sé que a algunos les han dado para 5 años y a otros les han dado para 2 años.
Ajá.
Y mi otra pregunta es, si ahorita para este programa, mi niño tiene un seguro social, entonces, ¿quiere decir que ese seguro ya no es válido? ¿Ni esa licencia después de que ya se termina ya no es válido?
El seguro, si ves tu seguro, dice válido nomás con un permiso de trabajo. Entonces, por eso es importante que tengan un permiso de trabajo. Pero vamos a hablar un poquito del proceso de renovar, porque ahorita no lo van a quitar porque están preparando un proceso de renovar.
Oh.
Ajá, entonces ya pasó 2 años, ¿qué va a pasar con las personas que tienen que renovar? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the renewal process. So for those who just came in, we're talking about DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So how many of you, again, we're going to sort of ask the question again, just for folks that came in. How many of you know what DACA is? A couple? Okay. How many know someone or yourself who has gotten DACA? Okay, a couple of you. How many of you or know someone that is ready to, or is going to be getting ready to renew? Yeah, okay, great. So I'm talking about the DACA renewal process. So the first question that you might ask yourself, can I renew my DACA now? So the answer is no, but soon. The actual DACA renewal form hasn't come out yet, but we're expecting it to come as early as this week. Entonces, todavía las personas que están tratando de renovar su permiso de trabajo, acción diferida, no pueden aplicar ahorita, pero estamos esperando que la forma final salga esta semana o para la próxima. So how do I know when can I reapply, or what do I have to do? So we actually have a great tool that you can sign up, which is the DACA Renewal Network. And when you sign up for this, you are able to get personalized text messages letting you know when you have to apply. So knowing that the guidelines aren't out yet. So when that happens, you're able to get messages and alerts saying, okay, this is your time. Now you have to reapply for DACA renewal, for your DACA. Okay, so the next question, entonces, yeah. So when do I need to reapply? So everyone will have a different timeline just because some folks got their permit earlier, later. So it's just going to really depend on case by case when you have to reapply. From what we know right now is that the application time frame opens 450 days before your expiration date. So my expiration date is November 13, I think. So I should be start thinking about before, obviously, but my time frame opens 5 months before that. So I shouldn't be submitting anything before those 5 months. Entonces, va a haber muchas personas que tengan diferente tiempo de que tienen que renovar su acción diferida. Pero ahorita lo que sabemos es de que no deben que estar aplicando antes de 5 meses, pero ya después de que empiecen los 5 meses, que puedan aplicar después de eso. And then it's recommended that you submit your application for 120 days before your expiration date, between 120 days and 90 days. So the other question is, will I need to pay a fee? So yes, for someone to be able to apply for deferred action, it costs $465. So you're gonna be having to spend that money again too. So applying for or paying $465. So start saving for that. Yes, yes. So I think that's on the next slide. Entonces, sabemos que ahorita va a costar otra vez $465 para renovar. So another question is, what documents do I need to submit with my application? So like I said, the final guidelines aren't out yet, but most people will not need to provide more evidence, more support evidence for renewal. Entonces lo que sabemos ahorita es de que la mayoría de personas no van a tener que entregar más evidencia para renovar. And just wanted to point out the last point here. So make sure that whatever you put on your application, your first initial application, that you're putting on your renewal application. So for example, the application asks you when did you come, how did you live, or how long did you live. So make sure all that information is the same for the renewal application. Entonces, nomás queremos decirles que tengan su aplicación que primero entregaron, porque para que pongan la misma información para la aplicación de renovarla.
Yeah, I have a question. So regarding of what you've done with, if you have DACA, you got your Social Security and you were able to go get a job, back to school. What if you didn't do anything with the social except for just get your driver's license and maybe work on the side? Is that going to affect you on your renewal? Or is it going to, if you submit that you went back to school and you did all this great stuff, is it going to help you to get the renewal faster, or how does that work?
So, like I said, most people are not going to have to put additional supporting evidence. So, that means that most people are not going to have to say that, oh, well, this is what I did with my social or whatever. But the guidelines, like final guidelines haven't come out, but they will come out sometime this week or next week, and then that's when we'll know, like, oh, well, they want to know this or that. But as of right now, most people are not going to have to submit other stuff, additional stuff.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And just in terms of the educational requirement, so again, they will not require renewal applicants to submit any educational related information. So what does this mean? So if you graduated from high school or have completed a GED, congratulations, you completed the educational requirement that they had initially for this program. And then, so the other situation could be that, you completed high school or got your GED since the first time you applied. So again, you just completed that educational requirement. And then the last option is that you haven't completed high school, so you're still either a high school student, or you haven't completed your GED program or any other educational program. So you will not need to show substantial measurable progress in your program. You'll continue to be DACA eligible. But again, the final requirements are going to come out this week, so it's really important to keep updated and to sign up for the DACA renewal. So if you go right here, sign up, DACArenewal.org, because this is where you're going to be able to get all the information once everything's out. You'll also be able to get information about events that are going around your area, if there are any. So being able to go to those events where they're going to be helping you fill out your application.
Right, the last website says DACA Renewal and then AL again?
Yeah, so this one, UnitedWeDream.org/DACA Renewal. So go to this website.
Okay, not go to the last one, right?
No, I'm not sure what the other one is, but sign up on
the
this
other
one.
one's just kind of like a shorter portal kind of thing, instead of writing, like having to write all of this.
Oh,
And also, if you Google DACA Renewal Network, you should find it. It should be like the first search that you have. So I'm just gonna go over really quick of what the DACA renewal is. But like I said, it's really a great tool for you to sign up on because you'll get customized reminders, forms, assistance, and more. So like I said, you'll be able to find out if there's events going on around your area. And so these information will be available to you afterwards. These are a couple of links that you can go on just to find out more about Deferred Action itself and things that you need to know about the renewal process. Okay, so just to talk a little bit about, so when you apply for DACA, before you have DACA, you're not able to work legally. You don't have a social security that is yours. You have limited job opportunities. What else? You file taxes with an ITIN number and things like that. So there's really a process from going to not having DACA and then on to having DACA. So there's a lot of legal process. So you have to file for Social Security. You have to apply for a driver's license. You have to get an ID. So we just kind of want to talk, or just sort of, think that just because there's a process to apply for DACA, but then there's also a process after you get DACA, which you have to, again, apply for all several things. But it's great now that you're able to get a driver's license and ID and all that stuff, but we just kind of wanted to point out that it's a process even after the process of applying for DACA. And again, these resources are going to be available for you, so how to get a Social Security, how to apply for a driver's license, all of that is available to you. And again, these are some of the resources that are out there. For you to figure out if you want to travel outside of the country through advance parole. So advance parole is an opportunity for folks to go outside of the country through different ways. So you can either apply under the reason of humanitarian reasons, educational reasons, or work. So these are just some of the resources that you should look into if you want to apply for advance parole. And then really consulting with a lawyer. Immigration law is a really complicated law, so whatever your case is really an individual case. So you should consult with a lawyer before applying for advance parole. But here are some great tools for you to look into before you sort of begin that process.
And I want to point out something. So although individuals might be able to get advance parole or be granted advance parole for like a specific amount of time, and this is kind of like the catch-22, like we're able to now go abroad for the 3 reasons that you mentioned, but it's also not like definite that you will be able to come back into the country. So it's a risk that if you choose to take, that is. Excuse me? Yeah, it's
385, I believe.
Yeah.
So you have to pay for that, and that's why it's so important that you consult with a lawyer, and a lawyer is assisting you through that process, because like she mentioned, coming back is discretionary, so it's up to the person that is letting you into the U.S. to let you in. So that's why important that you consult with an attorney before you apply for advance parole.
Señor, para la pasada y esta.
Okay, nomás queríamos decirles un poquito de del proceso de que aplicas para acción diferida, pero también hay un proceso para después de que agarres la acción diferida, entonces para la licencia, para el seguro social, para todo esto, ese es un proceso después de que agarras la acción diferida, y nomás estamos aquí diciendo de que hay información para que puedas agarrar tu seguro social, tu licencia, tu ID. Entonces nomás tenemos resources para que ustedes sepan cómo hacer eso. ¿Sí? Ajá.
Sí, le iba a decir, por ejemplo, mi hija ya agarró su acción diferida, ¿ok? Con ella le llegó también su permiso de trabajo, el seguro social. ¿Puede también aplicar para esa otra o es lo que me está diciendo?
¿Para el seguro social o?
Porque le llegó su seguro social, le llegó su forma y ya tiene su ID también del DMV. ¿ya no tiene que aplicar en esa? ¿O?
Entonces, nomás lo que estamos diciendo son los beneficios de acción diferida.
Ah,
Entonces,
ok.
los beneficios
Ah, ok.
de agarrar un
Sí,
seguro
sí, sí.
social, una
Ok.
y un...
Pensé que era un programa extra.
no, es
Ok.
beneficios que puedes
sí, beneficios.
agarrar.
Entonces, una de las cosas que también hemos tenido conversaciones con el Departamento de Educación es que, ¿qué quiere decir esto con FAFSA? En California, como tienen the California Dream Act, you have your own form that's similar to FAFSA that you fill out to be able to prove your need and be able to access state aid. Not all states have that. So we were like, okay, so what does this mean? Because now that students who have DACA have a valid social security number, does this mean that they can fill out the FAFSA form? The answer is yes to fill out the FAFSA form. The answer is no in terms of financial aid. So nobody in the nation, even if you have DACA, can access state or federal financial aid through FAFSA. So then you're asking yourself, well then why would I apply to FAFSA? And so the key thing to understand is that you're not applying to FAFSA, you're using the form, you're gonna fill out the form to get your student aid report. So what does the student aid report do? Basically, it kind of calculates your need as a student because you provide, your parents information in terms of taxes, how much they make, all that other stuff, and you provide your own information as well. So then this form is important for undocumented students because some scholarships are open to undocumented students, but the catch is that scholarship or maybe that institution asks for the student aid report from FAFSA to be able to give the money. And this is only in some cases. Some scholarships do, some scholarships don't. For example, the College Board is also, they have like their own, they call it the CSS profile, so it's kind of like their version of the FAFSA. So some institutions and scholarships take that form to be able to prove need. So this is kind of like a very, very tricky because if you're in California, the first thing that we advise is that you use, if you're eligible for California Dream Act, that you use a California Dream Act application because it's already tailored to what you would be eligible for in the state of California because you have in-state tuition and because you have state aid. So I would recommend you to look there first, and then obviously because AB 540 and this California Dream Act is not inclusive of everybody, then if you don't qualify for AB 540 or the California Dream Act, then we would advise that maybe look into FAFSA just to get the student aid report because you're not going to get any money. You're just going to get the report that says this is how much my family mates can contribute, and this is what my need is. And I know this is like very tricky to understand, so I'm going to pause here for like some questions on that or points of clarification.
I just want to clarify. So if you do apply for the Dream Act, the California Dream Act application for financial aid, you do not need the student aid report.
You don't. So if you apply for the California Dream Act form, they will give you the need form. You don't need to
Do any more FAFSA.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why we want to make sure that you use your resources that you have in California first if you are eligible for them, and then if not, then you can look at this as a course.
Yeah.
So what happens once you transfer to like a community university? How does that work?
So you should be applying for the California Dream Act.
Yeah, I know that, but like.
So depending on your need, they'll be able to provide financial aid, state financial aid for that.
But would it still be like a fee waiver or?
No, it's like financial aid. Like, so for example, my last year, I got the California Dream Act and I applied. And my tuition was about $4,000. And they were able to almost cover everything. So it's really depending on your need. But it's important that you just fill out the California Dream Act, and then they're able to say, oh, well, this is how much we can give you through grants. Does that answer your question?
I'm sorry, I work at a community college too, and a lot of our students are doing the Dream Act application, and also they're contacting the student aid in California, the student aid commission, to making sure again that your college is sending your GPA electronically. So let's say you're graduating right now this year, and your college should have already sent your GPA to ensure for the transfer CAD grant. A lot of students don't know about this, but there's a transfer CAD grant that you can qualify for if you're going for the transfer CAD grant. Specifically, and it's guaranteed that you're going to get it as far as you meet the criteria, or the university grant, one or the other. So,
It's also definitely important to just have that communication with schools and go to the financial aid and be like, okay, what do I need to apply? And then they'll be able to help you out. Because they might also have additional information about scholarships that you can apply besides, the California Dream Act.
Yeah. And in the booklet, like for today's presentations, there are specific sessions on the California Dream Act and 540, so it's important to reach out to the folks who did those presentations for any other questions, because then they will know best. And, I already said this, sorry. So tenemos 15 minutos, and I know we have a lot of questions. I was going to talk a little bit about the research that has been done since DACA came out, but we can just send this. I think it's more important to kind of field some of your questions. So we're going to start.
Do you have any names of reputable organizations that facilitate applying the DACA?
If you go to Own the Dream, the website, there should be some organizations that work with Own the Dream. So like I said, San Diego Dream Team, we work with Own the Dream to provide the resources for folks. So if you go to Own the Dream, it asks you for like your zip code, and then you're able to find events that are going around. And those are folks that are working with Own the Dream and other folks to provide those services.
Yeah, and those are not only like organizations. We have some pro bono lawyers as resources on there. We have in some institutions that have like worked with their law school students to be able to help on that process too. So all that, like she said, into your zip code, and they'll tell you what resources are available in your area.
Okay, so for the people that have applied for DACA, what is their immigration status?
So you have lawful presence, but you don't have a legal status.
So, for example, for institutions, when I apply, I will put lawful, because they ask you what's your, like, I apply for a university, I put my social security that I got from DACA, and then they're asking me, what is your, since I'm applying as an AP 540, what's my immigration status? So I didn't know what to answer.
So yeah, and I think again, like, this is really important that you talk to your institutions and ask them and say, okay, what your application is giving me these options, this is my situation. I have lawful presence, I don't have a legal status. What do you want me to put? Because these are the options that I have. So it's really important to, because it depends on institutions as well. So it's really important to say, like, okay, I know that I have legal presence through DACA, but I don't have a legal status. So what does that mean for the admission process?
Actually, to answer your question, like him, I work at community college, and the different systems will give you the instructions on how to label yourself. Like, meaning, like, the CSU system and the UC system actually produce a way to answer questions on those applications in a certain way that they'll trigger for them. That you're basically telling them how you apply for this. Because you're right that if you get confused and that you write your social security number, unfortunately, a lot of institutions, including community colleges, get confused when you say that. Because they have no idea what you're saying. Are you saying you're in the process of getting a green card, or are you saying that? So I think it's important, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's important to keep it separate and clean. That 8540 says 8540 status, and DACA is DACA.
Yeah.
And you can be both, and that's fine, and you can use social security number to work and do other things, but in terms of labeling yourself as a student for purposes of admissions, you just keep it as 8540 being the process. It tends to give you less problems and less questions get asked by the institutions. What exactly are you telling the students? Then it'll trigger other paperwork that they might want from you that you don't have. You don't have.
Because then they'll ask you, like, oh, well, are you an international student?
Exactly.
Or like, yeah. So I think that's definitely a way to go about it, to say, like, I'm an 8540 student if you are an 8540 student, because then it doesn't, ask all these questions like, are you an international student? Like, do you have a visa? Like, what kind of visa? And all that stuff.
So get help with your you're at community college?
Yes.
Get help with your transfer center. Every transfer center should have instructions directly from the CalCs and the UCs on how to answer those questions. Like, for example, that question, typically it might be none of the above or other. So that you don't have to say,
Yeah. Well, my situation was that I applied and I just sent in my 8540, and they're asking me, well, what's your immigration status? And they personally emailed me asking me that question. So I answer, I don't know, I'm under DACA, so I'm guessing
My guess is that you probably answered a question in a way that triggered that question.
Yeah.
Because normally, if you were to do it the other way, you wouldn't trigger those questions.
Yeah.
But again, that's what makes this kind of necessary.
Yeah. And it's just for you to know, like, your own personal thing, and then, you know, for them to know, well, what is it that I need to fill out? But definitely, like, you've seen, well, I'm gonna name if I put a student, and going from there. Any other questions? Yeah.
For the FAFSA, we said that they should do the FAFSA, but if they did the DREAM Act application, they shouldn't be doing the FAFSA, right? You're just saying if they don't qualify for the DREAM Act application, they should apply for the FAFSA, or what was the importance of the FAFSA?
Yeah, so if, yeah, thank you, Frank. Because
Can you go back to the slides before this one, or is it that? No.
So, if you're eligible for the California DREAM Act, you should definitely fill out that form, and that's it, because that is already, that was created and to answer the questions of need, you know, your status here in California, and in terms of like residency and other things. So that would be your number one. Fill that out if you're eligible. If you're not eligible for the California DREAM Act because you don't meet the qualifications, then FAFSA is a resource only to use so that you can get your student aid report. Because some institutions or scholarship organizations ask for the student aid report to prove need. And so we still don't have access to federal aid or work loan or work study. It's just to basically prove this is a report that proves how much I need to be able to pay for college essentially. And so I don't know if did that answer.
Yeah, but the only thing is, if I may, I'm sorry. The only thing is, in the past, as educators, we would tell people not to do the FAFSA because it's a federal document. But now that DACA is in place, I'm assuming that addresses that issue because we would say don't do it. You're basically helping yourself with the federal government. But now that DACA is protected now, in the ways that you're saying, I'm assuming it's not much of an issue anymore. So maybe your advice is
right.
It's okay now because of DACA.
It's okay only if you fill it out correctly. So we have, if you go to unitedgreen.org/DEEP, we actually provided a webinar on what are the steps to fill it out if you are using the FAFSA format as a resource. Because there's different triggers. So for example, one of the questions is, are you a U.S. citizen? And so we don't want people to misidentify themselves because then that could come and haunt you in later as providing false information or false identification. So the answer to that is DACA recipients would answer, no, I am not a citizen or eligible non-citizen. And this is relating to, you know, basically the question is, are you eligible for federal financial aid? And so you would say no. And then there's other questions about like, well, what if my parents are also undocumented? How would I fill it out that way? So we created a guide that answers these questions of like how to fill it out. And really we want to show this information mainly with educators because it gets kind of tricky as students. Like I myself was like, wait, what does this mean? I'm so confused. And because we've never been able to apply or use the FAFSA form, obviously we would not understand some of the language that's used in there. And even some educators who have worked with students, they still have to go rely on their financial aid offices to kind of understand some of the other language. So it is there as a resource. We have a guide. We did a webinar. We also provided the PowerPoint that we use for our webinar, and it also has the information for the different states. So the information in California, like we said, the number one option is like use the California DREAM Act, right? The application. And then Washington State, Texas, and New Mexico also have in-state financial aid. So we made sure to say, like, if you're in these states, these are your number one options, so that people don't get confused about the process.
Sí, yo tenía otra pregunta. Cuando ya nuestros hijos reciben su seguro de trabajo, ¿es cierto que ellos ya tienen que empezar a trabajar? Porque supuestamente que cuando lleguen a renovar y miran que ese seguro no está trabajando, y si mi hijo está estudiando, ¿te los pueden quitar?
Well, entonces, ahorita el proceso final de que dice, no, estos son los requisitos para renovar, todo eso no han salido, pero lo que estamos viendo es que no van a tener que entregar evidencia adicional para renovarlo. Entonces, si trabajan o no trabajan, no sería un problema hasta ahorita en los requisitos que están diciendo, porque a veces no... Las personas tienen el permiso, pero no es un requisito de que lo tienen que usar hasta ahorita, pero como le digo, van a salir los requisitos esta semana, o la próxima semana, que va a decir, oh, pues tienes que hacer esto, tienes que hacer el otro, con tu permiso. Pero ahorita no es un requisito de que lo tienes que usar.
Y para el cuidado de salud tenemos que buscar el lugar también porque supuestamente nuestros hijos no califican, aunque tengan seguro social, aunque estén en este programa, ellos no califican para algún cuidado de salud.
Hay diferentes programas aquí en California que una persona si no tiene papeles o tiene papeles puede aplicar. Nosotros no tenemos esa información, pero es importante que vayan con clínicas y las clínicas tienen opciones que les pueden dar. Diferentes ciudades tienen diferentes programas, entonces es importante que vayan con clínicas a preguntar, ok, esta es mi situación, tengo acción diferida, cuáles son los programas que puedo aplicar.
También está, señora, en la número 7, en la sección 3, van a ayudarnos un poquito de eso también.
Sí, hay otro workshop. So just for question real quick in English, that it was, like what kind of health services we can have with DACA. So it's really important that you go to community health clinics to figure that out. And then also, if there's going to be a workshop that's going to talk about that, what are your options if you are undocumented or that have DACA. And also, if you Google the California Immigrant Policy Center, they have a great resource. They have a guide that talks about your options, whether you have now that you have DACA. So if you Google California Immigrant Policy Center, they have a great resource online, and it's a guide and it talks about your options with DACA. It's the California Immigrant Policy Center. Any other questions? ¿Algunas preguntas?
She actually went, I don't know how to do that, it should be a president advanced parole, I don't know that. But just out of curiosity, not that I will do it, but just to know. So if you do, it's probably gonna haunt you later on, right? Like maybe
the only way that we know that, so folks can go to the country through advanced parole. If something else happened, then I don't know what happened with that case, right? But what we know is that folks can apply for advanced parole, and there's risks with that, but that's all we know. So I don't know what that case was with your friend, Any other questions about Deferred Action or anything? Like I said, if you Google United We Dream, On the Dream, DACA renewal, you should be able to have access to this information about the requirements, when you should be renewing stuff, about financial aid, and things like that.
Maybe we can have this presentation available.
I believe so. I believe folks are they're gonna upload it to a website, so it should be available. Because there's a lot of links that we can't click on right now, so you should be able to access.
And we also have these guides. They're Deferred Action for Childhood Arrival guides. They're kind of used as a target for educators and how they can support you. But it basically has all of the requirements on there. And how it has like what are some of the research that I was going to talk about is on there. So this is kind of like a good brochure to have all of this information in one location.
So any more questions before we wrap it up? Yeah. So folks can, yeah. Okay. So that's all we have for today. Thank you.